Well, another year has come around again and it's time to show you everything that I made in 2021. I have my trusty notebook here with all my makes listed and any notes about sizing and that kind of thing. So let's get going. I'm going to put photos or footage, whatever I've got, on this side, which is why I'm sitting to the side, and I will try and put the name or the number of the pattern on screen, and if I forget then I will put it down in the description box below so you can check that out. So let's get going. So we'll start with January, and I will have to look down because I won't remember everything off the top of my head. I made, the first two garments I made were the Esther tee, and these are by French Navy Now. Now the pattern has a side split hem, but I prefer, and I've sewed it straight down because I find that the t-shirt hangs a lot nicer rather than just sticking out. I made both of these, the pink and the blue one, in a viscose jersey. And with the cuff band, it does tend to sort of like flop down. So in one of them I did top stitch all the way around. The other one I just put some anchoring stitches on the seam line. This fabric peeled really badly. I left off the pocket as well. It peeled really badly. And after 3 months of wearing and washing, I had to put it in the textile recycling bin, which was really annoying. But it wasn't really cheap fabric either, but I no longer have those two. So they were the first two. And I made a, this may not make any sense, but I made a C at the bust grading to an F at the hips, in case you're interested. Next up, we have the Lark Tee by Grainline Studio. This is going to be a recurring theme this year because I made, it was my go-to t-shirt pattern basically, and the majority of the jersey tops that I made were using this pattern. So I will put a link down in the description box below so you can go and check that out because it comes with various necklines and sleeve lengths, and it's quite good. So I made this in a cotton jersey and I did a size 12 and I graded to a 14 at the waist and the hips. This is the short sleeve scoop neck option. I did shorten it for 1 inch at the waist, and then I cut 2 inches off the hem, which I realised was too short really because then it kept coming untucked from my jeans. So I should have left 1 inch on, but that's that first one that I made. Next I decided to make trousers, and a lot of January and probably into February actually was spent trying to master trousers. I still haven't mastered it, but I tried the Acajou trousers by Deer Doe, which were terrible. I made well, multiple muslins, and perhaps the fabric wasn't right. I mean, some of it was just old curtain fabric, but it tried to get the shape of it, and they're kind of like bananas, so they're kind of like cocoon trousers, that's probably the correct term, and with a flat at the front and elasticated at the back, and I had so much excess at the back of the leg, and I've tried numerous fitting adjustments. So these are the alterations that I did. I added 2 to 3 inches at the waist, I added 2 inches to the inside leg, I slimmed down the outer leg, I shortened the front crotch by 1 inch, I scooped out the back crotch, and then I added ½ inch to the back rise. So after all those, and I did a muslin like after each of those alterations, I didn't do them all in one go. Still didn't fit, too much excess to the back, looked terrible, but it was a complete fail. But you live and learn, I guess. Then I made the Lunar Tank by Love Notions. This is part of their Lunar Loungewear set, so you have various nighty and PJ bottoms and things, but I made the vest top so I could wear it out in the summertime, or has a layering piece. Now this one only uses ½ meter of jersey fabric, so it's really good. I tested it with a scrap of cotton jersey that I have left over from making the Sally jumpsuit the year before, 2020. So I cut a size, but it was a bit small, but I just wanted to test the fit. So I cut a medium, but I've written a note saying next time to cut a large and possibly use ribbing for the straps because they weren't that neat. That was the first time around though. The medium is fine at the bust, but it had to grade out at the waist, possibly lengthen or hem less than 1 inch is what I've written down. Now with that one, it has positive ease and it has negative ease, so it doesn't have negative ease all the way through, so you want to just check the measurements on that one. But I quite like that one, and it's quite a good like basic layering option. I also, at some point, I didn't write it down, but I'm going to slot it in here. I made a McCall's cardigan in some itchy purple fabric that I had, which I bought randomly somewhere in like a remnant bin. Just to test out, I really liked the Marlo cardigan. I haven't written down when that came out, so it may not be January, maybe later on, but I'll just slot it in now. I thought I would use an existing McCall's pattern that I had, but it sort of stuck out at the front, and then basically I should have just bought the Marlo pattern, which I later did, but I did make this up out of fabric that I already had just to use it up, test the sizing. I had to grade up from the pattern that I had because it was too small. It didn't quite go to plan, and I just used scrap buttons, but it was really itchy to wear and it wasn't very stretchy, so that got donated as well, but I just wanted to test the fit on that one. I made a Lark Tee again with fabric that I rescued from a dress that I made last year. When I say last year, I'm recording this in 2022, so I mean the year before these makes, so 2020. I rescued the fabric from a dress that I'd made. I tried to kind of make it up as I went along. It was way too tight. So out of all that, I cut out the Lark Tee. Unfortunately, I missed a couple of slots when I went with my overlocker going like down. I need to mask to get in that like curve right, because it kind of missed the armhole, and it did have a couple of missed spots, which I then tried and my overlocker just kept chopping into it. I don't like me and my overlocker are not friends. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that. But yeah, so I no longer have that one because it had a few holes in. That got donated, but I did get quite a good a lot of uses and wears out of that, but by the end of the year I don't have that one anymore. Next up we have the blouse by the Avid Seamstress. This was made in a viscose fabric. I have made this, or I did make this last year in a plain viscose, but the viscose just crinkles and creases up so bad that every time you hang it up or get it out, you have to iron it and then you wear it. The moment you sit in the car or something, it's creased up again. So this time I did it in a pattern viscose that I'd had a while, and I really like this one actually. Now the sizing that I made, I did a size 6 and I graded down to a 4. So normally I would grade up. When it comes to waist and hips, I would get a bigger size. I'd do small on top and then big on. But this one is quite a loose fit. I do think it looks a lot better tucked. It really needs to be tucked in. If you have it untucked, it kind of just hangs too big because there aren't any darts in it to give it shaping. So I suppose you could add your own, but I'm just saying this is a great blouse if you want it tucked in. I've worn this a few times for work, tucked into trousers, and it's great as a 3/4 length sleeve with an elastic cuff. The only thing that I would probably do next time is possibly shorten it on me because I've got short arms and it finishes at like a funny length and it sort of rides up. But I do still like that one and I do wear that one. I also did a 1-inch narrow shoulder adjustment on that pattern. Last up for January is the Uvita top by Itch to Stitch. This is a free pattern and let's have a look. I made the long sleeve, the sleeves were really long I put on this. I cut 1 inch off the sleeve and I still needed to hem it by 1 1/4 inches. I made a size 10 at the bust and the waist and I graded to a 16 at the waist and the hips. The fabric was a really funny kind of knit and it was like a woolly thing. I'd had it for a couple of years. I just didn't like it. The feel of it, it just didn't feel right and I didn't really have anything to go with it. So this one I donated and gave to my mum. Didn't really fit her either, so I'm hoping that she will then pass that on and not continue to wear it because it doesn't sit right. The neckline sat fine on me, but it didn't. We're not the same size, so I should have just donated it somewhere else. Right, moving on to February, I started off with the Simplicity K8529. This I've made quite a few times as well, and I did make it in the previous year. It's the Simplicity collaboration with Sew House 7, so it's their version of the toaster sweater. I made VD with 2 inches added in length because it's quite a cropped length on the pattern on this one. I colour blocked it with navy and a stripe, and I made this out of French terry. I had to recut the neckband though because the way the neckband is drafted, you can't stretch it to fit. I added 1 inch of extra fabric and it's still a bit tight to fit on that one. So yeah, it's one to watch out with this pattern. I always turn to base the neckbands on with a sewing machine before running through my overlocker so I can make sure that they do fit, and that's how I found out that I needed, and sometimes I had to recut a neckband. I made a size medium grading to a large. Next up is the True Buyers Marlo sweater. Now I mentioned this in my January makes that I was looking at the pattern, thought I could make something out of, and McCall's pattern already had, just decided to go ahead and buy it. But this is, if anyone's made this pattern, you'll know that it comes up big. So I made a size 14. It's in a grey, quite a loose knit. The neckband was these are my notes here, my neckband was too bulky to get under the overlocker foot, so when I put it down it stretched out, and then the end of the cardigan here and the neckband was sort of following falling down lower. I have what a lot of people have said now, just to baste it a bit on your sewing machine first, and then that will anchor it to go through the overlock, and then you won't get one end coming out longer than the other. Next time I really need to size down. I did go back and put it through my overlocker and try and chop off down there, but it was just big all over, so I didn't end up wearing it. It was one of those ones that just felt too sloppy and quite heavy because of the loose knit. I think it pulls the garment down, and it just, yeah, it was just too big all over. But I did come back to this pattern and do a smaller size later on. Next up with the Chloe jeans. This is part of the Black History Month challenge, and so I made these trousers. They were by Style So Me. They were jeans, but I made them as trousers. Didn't realise until I was sort of made several muslins later that this company they draft for 5'8", 5'9", I'm 5'3". The proportions were just really long for like the thigh length and the shins, and then obviously I realised that's why there was too much excess in those proportions, and it didn't really work. I took 1 inch off the front crotch, scooped out the back crotch. I left off the coin pocket because the instructions are really confusing on that. I made a size 18 and just cut several inches off the sides, and they were still baggy. So unfortunately, although from the front they look okay, they were just too, it was just too sort of baggy on the legs. Next up in February is another version of the Marlo sweater by True Bias. This is made in a burgundy soft sweat fabric, and this time I made size 10. So originally I made a 14. I'd gone down 2 sizes, so I made a 10 and then graded to a 12 at the hips, and it was a lot better fit. The only thing I would say about this is that the pattern does call for 30mm buttonholes, and my machine, previous and the current one I think, only goes up to 28mm buttonhole. So even with trying to do like the manual function, unless you want to like do, you know, like a line of stitching, then do like a bar tack, and then another, like, so you're doing like a 4-step buttonhole, you could probably make it larger. But if you're doing the 1-step buttonhole, my machine didn't do it. So I did the largest I could and just snipped in a bit extra into the buttonhole so I could get the button through it. So let's have a look. Basted the bands on first with the sewing machine, and then it went through the overlocker. So I slightly changed it from the one I made previously, and then it didn't stretch out, and then it was a lot better sort of size all over. Next up was the Felicia sweater by Mood Fabrics. Now they have various free patterns on their website. This was made to test out their sort of sewing patterns and sizing with a challenge, Instagram challenge, which I knew was coming up, but I wanted to test it. So this one I made in a size 16, 18, so they're combined sizes. I did no grading. I did shorten the neck band depth by 1 centimetre because it was really high on me. I made on the overlocker really quickly and hemmed it on my sewing machine. This was made in a French terry fabric, and it only used 1.5 meters of fabric. So it had the same piece for the front and the back. So you have the sleeve piece and the neck piece. So there was only 3 pieces to actually print out at home, so I think that worked out quite well. Next up is the Sew Over It Florence dress. This was made in a viscose, and I did a full bust adjustment because I did a toile in this, and the waistband was riding up at the front and it just wasn't sitting straight. So I knew that's because I needed to do a full bust adjustment to lower that back down at the front so the waist would be even. I made a size 14. I did a 1/2 inch narrow shoulder adjustment, but I've written a note to do a 1 inch next time, so it still didn't quite take enough out of the shoulders. Next up are Berger trousers. This is from a pattern I'd had for a while, which is, so it's out of print now. It was from the petite range, and it was Berger 7058. I made a size 22 and I added 1 inch to the centre front top, reduced the front crotch by 1 inch, and added 1 inch to the back curve above the crotch. I made the facings into a waistband, so flipped those out, so I cut 2 of each. I interfaced them and added belt loops and added an invisible side zip. These trousers actually probably fit me the best out of all the ones that I've tried. But again, I had that excess at the back of the leg, so I am thinking there is someone called Gina Renee Designs, and she has like a pants fitting ebook, I think it is, and she talks about balancing the pattern. So I think this year I will be looking at trying to do that, because I really do want to make trousers, but I was so disheartened from the beginning of 2021 that I sort of like tailed off and didn't really make like proper trousers. So these Berger ones, they were okay, there was still the issue at the back, but I really prefer, there was no pocket as designed for pocket. and I do actually prefer a front fly zip and not to have too much elastic in the trousers. So for March, I start off by making the I Am Julie skirt, which is by I Am Patterns. It's a wrap over skirt, so it was good for like adjustable waist. You have one button and then you just tie it the other side. I made this in a fine needle cord, which was supposed to be quite a bulky fabric to make it in. I did find that the back darts did sort of stick out funny and puff the fabric out, so I stitched both of those, top stitched both of those down, and it did sit a lot flatter. It has a facing on that front sort of flap, and that the cat, like I do in a catch stitch, doesn't work, so I did top stitch all the way around on that one. I top stitched the facing at 3 centimeters all around and did put some catch stitches in to hold the front facing in place, and I made this in a size 50. Next up is Peppermint Magazine. It's a free top and it was their ruffle sleeve top, and I made this in a viscose marocaine. It's like a crepe type fabric, and I made a size F, and I extended the length by 2 inches because it seemed like quite a cropped length. I left off the ruffle, obviously you can see from the footage, and I took in the side seams in by another 1 inch on each side. It looked okay tucked in, but it was still too big. And so I've written a note, could do with taking the neckline shoulder and possibly reduce the width of the sleeve. I did not try and make this pattern again. I think when you get a free pattern, if it doesn't work the first sort of time, sometimes I think it's not worth it. I don't know if they've put the time and effort into drafting it. It is obviously a loose boxy top, and that shape just doesn't really suit my body shape. So I prefer to have it more nipped in at the waist. So for me, that was a fail, and I didn't really wear that one. Next up we have three t-shirts. Each of these are the Lark t-shirts. This time around I didn't chop off so much. So all of these I made a size 12, grading to a 14 at the waist and the hips, and I shortened them by 1 inch at the waist, and then that was it. So these are actually quite long. I think before I did 1 inch off at the waist and then 2 inch off the hem. I probably need to do 1 inch off the waist and then 1 inch off the hem, because it does come out as quite a long t-shirt. All 3 of these were made in cotton jersey. Next up was the Frugal Frocks Challenge. If you were around on the internet, you would have come across this in 2021. And this is the idea of making a pattern using fabric from your stash that you already had, and using a free pattern, so it wouldn't really cost anything other than perhaps if you had to buy a few notions or something. So I looked through my fabrics and selected this one, which is by Lady. I made 2, but the first one was a Lady McElroy fabric, which I bought the previous year and just couldn't decide. It's such a large print, and then I wasn't sure on the colour, but I thought, right, okay, I'm just going to use it for this. So I made the Stitch Sisters caftan, which is a free pattern. You just draft it. It's basically just a load of triangles. I made the size 14, and I shortened the V-neck by 1 inch, and so I cut it as 53 inches instead of cutting it at 56 inches. And so then I shortened the vents because it has vents at the side, and by shortening it, the vents came at a funny length, so I just sort of cut them a bit higher up. The dress that I made for the Frugal Frocks Challenge was the Cypress dress. Now this goes back to the Mood Fabrics because this is a Mood Fabrics pattern, so it was free, and again it has combined sizing. So this time around I did a 12 to 14 at the shoulders and bust and graded to a 16, 18 at the waist. I did a narrow shoulder adjustment, raised the armhole, but forgot to raise it to the front piece, so I raised the back armhole by 1 inch, then forgot to do the front. I made bias binding and used it to finish the armholes and the hem as it came out a bit short. I put stitches in place to hold the facing. I also made it too small at the bust. I think I must have trimmed it down a bit more, and then it was super tight. So because it was a pattern fabric, I added a paneling at the sides. You couldn't have seen it because it was like camouflage. If it were plain fabric, it would have looked awful. But with the pattern fabric, I added a side panel in, and that gave me a bit more ease. So it wasn't my best make, but the collar as well wouldn't sit flat. It just kept rolling through. So again, this dress got donated. The buttons sort of sat a bit funny and they sort of stuck out a bit, and I just didn't like it on me. It was a good experience of trying out a new pattern and trying to get that to fit, but there were quite a few adjustments and I wasn't happy with it at the end of the day on that one. Next up is the Ada sweatshirt by Schnitchen Patterns. I made this in a French terry fabric, and I made size XL, and I cut the shorter length because there was length options and there's options for a hoodie or a sweatshirt. The sleeve pieces I couldn't get the sleeve pieces to line up because it has sort of sections of like curved pieces of where you can then like colour block, I had to unpick, and then it wasn't great unpicking, but I did manage to do it. So I had to recut another piece because one piece, by the time I'd unpicked it, just like frayed out and it wasn't great. I used ribbing for the neckline, cuffs and bottom band as the instructions suggest, and this was a revelation. So with sweatshirts, with using the ribbing, it was so much more stretchy. So many times I've made sweatshirts where you made it out the same fabric, you can't roll the sleeves up because you just don't have that stretch percentage in the fabric. So I really recommend using ribbing, especially for the neckband and the cuffs. Next up is the Fiore skirt by Closet Core Patterns. I made this in an olive needle cord in a size 14, and I shortened it by 1 inch at the shortening lines, so it's about halfway up, rather than from the hem. The facing did stretch out because it was cut on the bias, so what I did was I pulled it up, I chopped it off and then put it back on. So I unpicked part of the waistband, pulled up the facing, chopped it, put it back, and then re-stitched the waistband back off and reattached it. It came out okay, a bit annoying that it stretched out, but that was that one. And then I made another lark tee, which is this one here, which is the pink and red cotton jersey. Again, size 14 grading to size 12 grading to. Into April, we have McCall's 7575, and this is a shirt that I made in a size 16. I did quite a few adjustments, so I'm just gonna quickly whiz down the adjustments I had to do on this one. So I did a 1 inch full bust adjustment, a 1 inch narrow shoulder adjustment. I added length to the front shoulders and back as it was pulling forward. I took excess from the side of the back yoke, but kept the centre back the same. I moved the dart to the point 1 inch lower at the apex. But I did a bicep adjustment, but then added to the sides of the sleeve by 1 centimetre, so I then didn't need to have done the biceps adjustment. I lowered the armhole by 1 centimetre. I added length to the back to make it the same length as the front after the full bust adjustment, because I'd done the full bust adjustment slightly wrong. The front had been shortened by 1 inch at the waist, and then both, what does this say? Something lengthened, back lengthened by 1 inch. So a lot of adjustments. I made it in this leaf pattern, which is a linen fabric, and it just felt quite stiff, and I don't think it was the best fabric to have made a shirt in. It felt really boxy on me, so again, I wore it a couple of times, but then I just didn't feel great in it, so that has been donated. Next up was a leather clutch bag. Now this one is, I won this on a giveaway on Instagram from RJ Leather Studio, and it came as a kit, so everything was cut out and all the materials were included in that, even the Teflon foot. It was great for learning to sew leather because I've never sewn leather before, so there's quite a few little tips in there, and I was really pleased, and I have used this bag out and about as well, so I was really happy with this one, and with it being leather I know that it will last a long time. Next I made a denim tote bag for my colleague's birthday, but I don't have a picture of it. I then made a cover for our outdoor garden sofa. We bought some garden furniture, and then I bought 2 shower curtains from B&M Bargains, and I made them into covers. I made them inside out. I did the pattern in the reverse without realising. So the photo or the footage I've got shows the seams on the outside. I had to unpick them and then like sew them on the other side so I could get that L shaped, and it did work eventually. And I still have them on our furniture now, and it's kept the rain off and stopped the covers from getting really wet, especially during the summer, so that was quite a good make. It is faded quite a bit though in the sun. Next up is another Marlo sweater. It's a navy one. I added 3 inches to the short length, so it's not as long as, because there's a short length and a long length, the 2 options on this pattern, but I made a midway, so I added 3 inches to the long one. I think I added an extra button, I just spaced the buttons out, but this fabric did pill when I put it in the wash for a pre-wash, and so once I made it, I felt like a bobbled cardigan, so it did feel a bit sloppy, but I think that is the style anyway of that type of cardigan, but unfortunately the fabric let that one down on those. I then made my daughter an Ada sweatshirt from the Teens pattern in French Terry, colour blocked it, and she never wore it. We're into May now, things are starting to slow down a bit. Now I think at the beginning of the year we were in lockdown, so I think that's perhaps why I made as many things as I did, because I was at home. Come May, we were back in at work and the kids were back at school, so I didn't have as much time to make things. I did make another McCall shirt, 7575, this time in a white and blue gingham linen, which wasn't as stiff as the leaf print fabric. And I did try and line up the patterns, but it did feel a bit like stretched out. And again, I just felt boxy in it. I don't think that pattern is for me. All the adjustments I did, I was able to cut this one and sew this one really quick because the adjustments, I'd already made the adjustments, so I knew it fitted me really well. There was plenty of wearing ease, and I don't know if it's the sleeves, it just felt very square, very broad, and I didn't like it. This is the month I had my first COVID vaccine, and I felt ill for a week, and I was off work and I was in bed for like 4 days. So nothing else got made in May, not June. Into June now, so June 2021, I started off with the Sew Over It Ultimate Culottes. Now I graded these between a 16 and 18 when I checked the measurements, so I kind of made my own size 17. I shortened the front crotch rise by 1 inch. This fabric was a Sew Over It fabric and possibly a crepe. It's one that I looked through my stash when I came across the Frugal Frocks challenge earlier in the year. I thought I needed to make that into something, but I decided it was quite floating, it wasn't too thin, and it was quite a good weight for summer. So I ended up sewing the zip on the right instead of the left. I really need to go back and put a label in these trousers because I just have to remember that otherwise I'm putting them on back to front and you can't obviously see which way around is the right way. I chopped 3 inches of the leg length and I still did a 1 inch hem because these are super long. I'm 5'3", I'm quite short. So yeah, they were, but I put them down, a really good fit. They did give me a little bit of a wedgie at the back, so I did make an amendment when I made another pair of these, which I'll mention in a moment. I made another Lunar Tank by Love Notions in black jersey this time. I made a medium and I graded to a large at the waist and the hips rather than before when I made it and I just did a straight medium. I graded out this time. It says there's negative ease at the bust and positive ease at the waist and the hips. Possibly could have sewn a medium I put, but not too tight for hot days. So actually it was fine, the size that I made. And again, I only use 1/2 meter of fabric, so it's a great option if you want to use up some of your scraps. I did put aims to make, I did this month make more muslins for my husband's cosplay. I haven't included those in this video because I know no one really cares. The moment I mention cosplay, everyone switches off. So I haven't put, don't worry, I haven't put any of these, but sometimes when I haven't made that many things for myself, in between I'm making toiles and muslins, so I'm working on the fit and I don't always get a finished garment. I did make another pair of ultimate culottes. This time it was in some kind of weird stretch suiting that I'd bought somewhere along the way and had it in my stash. So again, I shortened the front crotch by 1 inch, added 1 inch to the back crotch as the other pair I sewed would give me a bit of a wedgie when I bent over, but it was they hung too low. So I think the trouble is I'd taken 1 inch out the front and added 1 inch at the back, and they basically I'd left them as if the pattern hadn't really been changed. I have seen on Tomcat Stitchery where she says you then take that width out at the side, at the hip, so you're then not adding it back in to like the other side, if that makes sense. So next up was the Lark Tee, and I made it in the V-neck to try out. The V was quite high. I like, if it's going to be V-neck, I prefer proper like deep V. So I cut it at the lowest point on the pattern so I could get the smaller size, so I could get the lowest V. This time I made the cap sleeve option. Haven't written down the size, so I'm assuming that's a 12 grading to a 14. That was quite long as well, and I'm not sure the colour really suits me, but I made it and then wore it with like a red cardigan and it kind of matched, but it is funny colours. Into July, now something significant happened in July, but I made a beach bag. So I have some raincoating fabric that I'd bought specifically to make a beach bag because I knew that I'd been taking carrier bags to the beach and it was the right mess. So I made two. So I made a large tote bag and then I made a beach bag. So the beach bag was lined and it had pockets. I did forget to sort of sew the bottom of that pocket so at the front. So if you put something in the front, sometimes it disappears into like the lining of the bag. I like messed it up. But I realized, and I did like sort of like strong handles. But then I went to the beach and realised by making a really big bag, I then had to carry everything and it was really heavy and no one else could carry anything. So I think if you're going to follow me and make a beach bag, don't make it really big thinking you'll just scoop everything into the bag, because it does all fit into one bag, but then it means you have to, one person has to carry everything in. That's really heavy. Slight fail, but I have still got that. I think it fits buckets and spades in, and that's fine. Let's have a look. Oh, this was my big decluttering month. So I will probably do a separate video or series about this, but I have decluttered so much stuff all through the house. But I started with my sewing room, and so the lot of fabrics and patterns were decluttered, destashed, they were donated, they were taken to the textile recycling bin. This also includes some of the things that I'd made, and so this has had quite an effect on my sewing. So this happened in July, and it has slowed me down quite a bit. But moving into August, I made the cape skirt by Sew Over It. It's from one of the ebooks that I purchased in the sale, which is the Work to Weekend ebook. This was made in viscose, and it has like sort of slits. There's probably technical go days, I don't know, but there's technical probably language for this, but there's slits all the way around it. I cut a size in between two sizes. I haven't actually written down what size I made, so I don't really know. I took 2 inches out of the shortening lines and I did a 1 inch hem. It's still quite long. I had to slip stitch all the side splits, but machine hemmed at the bottom. I used this. Oh, yeah, I've written a note. I had to use the stop start button as the pedal wasn't working. So everything I've made up until now was on my Brother F420. And then something happened and I couldn't get it going. Also, I know I'm talking about August, but I think it was in July, my parents had their golden wedding anniversary, and so my mum showed me, and I shared it on my channel, her wedding dress that she made 50 years ago, which she still has, and it's white, it hasn't yellowed at all. So I'll include that. I probably would have tagged that on. I'll include that now. And she showed it with a lace sleeve. She was married in the 1970s, and it's very indicative of that era. And so I do have a video all about that. I will put a link down in the description box below if you want to know a bit more details and see sort of that dress up close and see what she has to say about it. But it just reminded me, because I took my machine to their house to make something. I think it was going to hem some tablecloths for their party, and the pedal made a funny noise when I plugged it in. I didn't think anything of it, and then it sort of fits itself. But now I've written it down here that it happened again. And so at some point in this month, I can't remember when, I did have to send my machine off to be repaired, and it was gone for like 7 weeks, but we'll move on to that in a moment. I had the Jali patterns, which is the bobby top. I'd had this for a while actually, because Jali do children's right through to adults, and so you just trace off your size. So I hadn't cut this one out, so I still had the pattern intact, so I traced this one off. I did a size X at the shoulders. Again, this may not make any sense if you've never made the pattern, but an X at the shoulders and a Y everywhere else. I shortened the pattern pieces by 2 inches and did a 1 inch hem, so it came up quite long. I stitched the armholes up by 2 inches afterwards, as they were way too low, because they came out like down here. So no one wants the whole, like the armhole like down here, so shorten them up by 2 inches on that one. Let's have a look. The V-neck was not the neatest, as the seam allowance was 1/4 of an inch. So the seam allowance was 1/4 of an inch, and then you had to snip to the seam allowance. Well, there's nothing left. I went back to my Stitch Sisters caftan that I made for the Frugal Frocks challenge, so I hadn't worn it because it was full length, and I decided that I would wear it if I'd chopped some length off it. So I cut it to knee length, and it made it a lot more wearable, and so I did then wear it out to a function. And I thought, actually, yes, that's quite, so sometimes it is quite good to go back to things that you've made and see if you can adjust them, if you can make them fit better. And I realised that although it looked, doing a maxi length dress did look quite good, it was a style that I wouldn't necessarily have done before. I found that the knee length was suitable, more suited to my frame, and I then wore it. September's my page, it's like quite empty, and I think this is when my machine had gone off to be repaired. I made a Astaire tee in black bamboo jersey. First time using bamboo jersey, and I'm sorry, but it peeled, even wearing it before I'd washed it. Where I was wearing it and moving, it was pilling, and I just wasn't that impressed. And it wasn't a real like cheap quality bamboo jersey, but it's not something that I would rush to go and use again. I made a Luna tank in black peach skin jersey, which I paired with the Sew Over It Kate skirt. And it had quite a nice feel to it, and again, Luna tank, it was quite a good basic, so that will probably be a staple for summer, certainly. So I had been without my machine. My brother's machine had been sent off to be repaired. They said there was a fault in when you plug the foot pedal in. It was the connection once the plug had gone in, because I had bought a new foot pedal, tried to see if that would work, it didn't. It was the connection in the machine once you plug the pedal in. The shop I bought it from, I sent it back to them because I was still under warranty with brother, and they said it will be, that's fine, it will be repaired free of charge, but the engineer hadn't got the part, and brother were out of stock with the parts, and they had no idea when it was coming in, and somebody else had the same problem with their exact same problem with their same brother machine. And I just thought weeks went by and I didn't hear anything, and they said we're still waiting, and I thought with the current sort of situation, who knows? I mean, I know what happens with like the PlayStation 5, people can't get hold of electronics and things. I just thought I could be months waiting for this. In the end, it was 6 to 7 weeks without it. But at this point when I'm waiting, I've gone like 4 weeks or so. And then my husband talked me into buying a new machine. I don't like really spending much money, so he talked me into it, and so I went for the Juki DX7, which is here, which I have got a video on, my unboxing video, which I'll put down in the description box below. I absolutely love it. I will probably do an update video at some point, because I know a few people have messaged me with details about how I'm getting on with the machine. Absolutely love it, worth every penny. And to be honest, I haven't sewn anything on my brother since I got it back, which I did get it back eventually. Right, moving into October, so don't worry, thank you for hanging in there. We are getting towards the end of the year. Please hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and also give it a thumbs up, please. I really appreciate that. So it helps more people to see this video. I made another Marlo sweater, so another Marlo sweater by True Bias in a grey cable knit cardigan. This was, I really like the cable knit, so I made again that sort of size in between, and I used up all my fabrics. I think I had bought 1.5 meters, and I didn't have enough fabric to do any pockets, and I do really miss a pocket on that cardigan. So I think next time if I have enough, I'll make that size, but I will try and add a pocket if I can. I then made the Mallard Jacket by the Sewing Revival. Now this one, it was a fabric that I found when I was decluttering the house. Basically, I found some fabric I bought to make a coat a few years ago. I'd never made it, so I didn't know the composition. I knew there was some kind of wool in there. I could have done a burn test, but I didn't. So I made this in the short length because there's 2 length options on this one. I made this in a size 16. The footage I've got is before I added the snap, so it has snap closures, and I was going to then take it to the dry cleaners to be professionally pressed to see if they could get it to press flatter than I tried with my clapper, and then I was going to sew the closures on. So with the footage, I haven't got the snaps on there, but I did get it pressed and then I added the snaps on there. Oh, I did make the Ada, so I made an Ada sweatshirt for my daughter, which she never wore. I made the Ada sweatshirt in the adult size. Now I made it previously in a French terry, so I just went off the same sizing, but I made it in a knit. It was like quite a loose knit, and it felt heavy. So because the French terry kind of kept its shape and size, it was fine. This one was more of a knitted jersey, and the weight of it pulled it down, and it came out absolutely huge. I mean, I made the size XL, I trimmed it down on the overlocker, but the neck was big, everything was big. Next up is another item from the Sew Over It ebook Works the Weekend, which is the Edie top. This was in a black and white cotton jersey stripe. I did a 1-inch narrow, because it's boat neck, I did a 1-inch narrow shoulder adjustment, narrowed the neckline as well, but it still shows my bra straps. I find that really annoying if you make a boat neck, and I did the narrow shoulder adjustment, so put it up like that, added extra to try and cover, and it's still, yeah, so I need to work on that one. I shortened it by 1 inch at the waist, and I made a size 16. Question mark, I don't know why I put a question mark there. Next up is the Felicia pattern, again with the free one by Mood Patterns. I shortened the funnel neck again by 1 centimetre. This time I cut a 14 to 16. So originally I'd done a size 16 to 18 and it came out quite big on me. So this time I'd cut the size down to the 14 to 16. Again, it's in a French terry, only uses 1.5 meters of fabric. I really like this. It's like quite a cozy make. I can still get a t-shirt underneath it as well, so layering piece as well. Next up is another Lark Tee, but this time I tried the boat neck option. I think because after I did the ED top when you could see my bra straps, I thought, okay, I'll try a different boat neck and I'll try the Lark Tee, and this one does give me better coverage. So I think out of all the boat necks, although it's like a lower boat neck, it's not as high up, I think I need to just compare the pattern pieces and do a mixture of the two so I can get it perhaps a higher one, but that it does give me coverage at the shoulders. I made the cap sleeve version. I shortened this by 2 inches at the waist, but it was still too long. Did a 12 graded to a 14. This one is in, let me put, oh, this is the red and white cotton jersey stripe fabric. I also made a black version as well, which I'll pop in here. And then I made another Simplicity toaster, the 8529 medium. Now the neckband was too short, so I recut it with an extra inch. Still too small. So there is some gathering at the side and it's really annoying, and the neckband doesn't really sit flat, so I have put use ribbing next time. Also in October, in addition to that Lark Tee in black, I made an Archer shirt. This is by Grainline Studio again. This is a pattern I bought absolutely ages ago, and so I tried to root around in my downloads for Grainline Studio to see if I could find it and see what, I think I did have to reprint a different size, but this one was made in a viscose twill fabric, and it's a lot nicer than the actual viscose. It wasn't all slipping about everywhere, and it doesn't crease. It's a thicker, heavier fabric, and it's quite a good drape to it. I did pattern matching on this one as best I could to try and get those black stripes going across at the front and at the back. For the back piece, because it has a centre back pleat, I tried to pattern match with the yoke from the sides, and then the middle bit I knew it didn't necessarily need to pattern match because that was where the pleat was going to happen. The last thing that I made in October was the Ayora Jacket, which is by Pauline Alice Patterns. I made size 44. This is a quilted jacket, but it's designed to quilt the jacket yourself, but I was lazy and bought pre-quilted fabric, and I had lining left over from a raincoat I'd made the previous year, which is like a polyester polka dot. And so I used that, so I just sewed the lining and the pieces together as one, then made bias binding to cover up the seams, because it's like padded, the sort of foam insides. It was quite rough on the armholes down here, but I think I added 5 inches of length to this because it finished above my hips and I wanted it. I didn't want cardigans and things poking out underneath it, so I added length. But what I forgot to do was I just added it straight down, but I should have graded out and added width. So I added it at the waist, but my hips and my hips and my waist is about a 10-inch difference. So it was quite snug around my hips. I still haven't added snaps to it. I was going to put some snap closures to it, and it is still on my list to do, although it's quite snug at the bottom, certainly for the top part. And I really need to do that because I have been wearing that jacket quite a bit, but when it's windy and cold, you don't want a jacket that just sits open, so I do need, that is one thing I need to just do. I've got the snaps, just need to get the hammer. Okay. Thanks for hanging in there. We're nearly there. We're into November now. So in November I made some Christmas 3D face masks. That's the 3D face mask pattern. The Ayora jacket was really short on the sleeves, really short on the arms, so I did then do an alteration of that in December. So going into December 2021, I made another, guess it, Simplicity 8529. So going into December, I made, can you guess what sweatshirt I made? It was the Simplicity 8529 again. I made in Christmas French terry fabric, but this time I bought ribbing. I emailed the shop and I said, do you have any ribbing that matches that French terry? And so I went with like a navy ribbing for the neckband and the cuffs. If I had bought it for the bottom band as well, it just would have made it really expensive. So I used the fabric, the French terry, just to do the bottom band. So the back bottom band isn't the same as the front bottom band, but it's for a Christmas jumper, so I'm not going to wear it all year round. I made some work gifts for colleagues. We tend to do like sort of token presents to each other. So for one colleague I made some gingham face masks. 2 colleagues got a snood, which was leftover fabric from doing the Ada sweatshirt in that sort of glittery grey fabric, the jumper which came out really big, so I had some offcuts, so I used that. The glitter I tried would be really itchy against the skin, so I sort of lined it and used the reverse fabric so the glitter was only on the outside and on the inside, and I made a denim pencil case. I then went back to my Ayora jacket because I hadn't worn it because the sleeves were like up here. And so it had a sleeve facing, so I unpicked that from the lining and took it off and added, the facing became a cuff, and then I cut a new facing, so I had a cuff and then I put a facing and then the facing attached to the lining, so I didn't have to recut lining, which I thought perhaps I would have had to do. And so although it's not a perfect match on the quilting front, you wouldn't really know that it's not supposed to be there. It's quite wide, I guess, at the cuffs, but it's made it so much more wearable. So once I've got the snaps on, that is going to be my go-to probably winter jacket for the time. If you want to check out my trouser fitting series that I did at the beginning of the year and you want to see all those adjustments and how I got on, I will put that link on screen now, and I hope to see you over there, and I wish you all a very happy new year.